as long as you want, till we get bored. Good afternoon, and it's Liliat from Heal Scotland here. And with me, I have my friend, economist Neil McInroy with me. And Neil has been educating me for quite a few years now and inspiring me around the health and the wealth connection in Scotland. And I remember, Neil, when you said to me, you'll never heal Scotland without looking at the economics. And it just kind of hit me right there because it's pretty obvious when you think about it, but I hadn't thought about it. So thank you. How are you doing?
I'm doing really well, Lily. Thanks for the invite. I've got a little bit of a cold. I've been abroad, came back, got a cold, but I'm right. I'm good. I'm looking forward to this conversation, and more than that, looking forward to the festival. Hey, it's next
Yes,
weekend.
I
Whoa,
know. I mean,
fantastic.
I'm like the weather was like this, but you just know in Scotland, I was tempted today to look at the long range, and then I thought I'm not going to because you know it changes. And last year the weather was horrendous, and we had a brilliant festival. So I'm kind of like, if we can do it in the rain and the howling wind, we can certainly do it in anything now. So
Exactly.
yes, so I mean, one of your kind of more fascinating conversations for me was talking about community wealth building because
Aye.
it seemed to me that that's a bit of a no-brainer. It seemed to me that it made complete sense and it was also doable.
Yes.
So can you just kind of talk about that a little bit? What
Aye.
community wealth building actually is?
Aye. Well, it's timely because the government, the Scottish government, has published legislation now on community wealth building, which is going to be done
Really?
before the end of this parliamentary term. So yeah, they've published a bill. But that's legislation. You know, there's stuff going on anyway with community wealth building. But what it basically is simple. It says, hold on here, the economy is a social construct. Yeah, the economy is something that we make, and the economy doesn't work very well. Right? There's lots of wealth gets extracted. Lots of people don't get their just desserts from the economy. The economy is contributing, well, is creating the climate crisis. So it's saying, hold on, let's bring the economy back home. Let's make sure the wealth works for our people, our place, and our planet. So it's big theory, big aspirations, but practically it says, let's do homey things. Let's do real things. Let's make the economy relate really to our lives, to our people, to our communities, and to our place. And we know the economy doesn't work very well for many places and people on the planet. So it's just bringing the economy back home. It's making it relate to us as people and to the planet.
Yeah. And I think, I mean, given that we've just kind of witnessed the biggest wealth transfer in human history, I think it's a very, very relevant time to be talking about, you know, it's all, and I've done my fair share of this. It's the apparent others that are causing all the problems. But the reality, the kind of harsh reality, is realizing that we all play a part in it. And I always remember actually going to go and get my shopping in Glasgow and thinking, I'm in a position that I can spend this money within my community. And so, sometimes you can do that, spend in your local shops. But of course, ultimately, especially right now, it can come down to cost. That if you go to out with your community, and I'm not just meaning saving a couple of pounds, I'm talking about saving maybe 25% of your bill. So how do we kind of get round that?
Well, yeah, I mean, what we've got here is that, you know, we all live in capitalism. We all live under the cosh of the economic system. And I don't know if you know the famous science fiction writer Ursula Le Guin. Um, great author, a philosopher actually. She said, "We live in capitalism. Its power seems inescapable. We all live in it. But so did the divine right of kings. And
Mhm.
any human power can be resisted and changed by human beings." And what's important about what Ursula? Oh God, what's happened here? Oh, sorry about that. What's happened? My screen went off funny. Are you still there?
Ah, you look fine from here.
Oh, there you had the back. Sorry about that. Aye. What Ursula is saying is that we can make the economy any way we want that works for us. And it seems almost like, we fit in it and we kind of think we can't do much because it's just a big economy. But we can. We can buy from our local shop. We can own our own community hall. We can own our own community organisation. We can own our own land, yeah, and make that a productive use of that land. So
Yes.
ownership is kind of how we can start to take more control of this. Community wealth bonds is not just about buying local. It's actually about making sure that we own more of the economy ourselves, so that when we own it, we're not going to crap on our own back doorstep. When we own things, yeah, and
Yes.
particularly economic stuff, we do things that are virtuous and worthy more than if it's not owned by us. Hey, and in Scotland, we know, don't we, what happens when, look at our history of land ownership. Huge tracts of Scotland, we've got nae say over, and lots of horrible things have been done in that by the people that own that land in the interest of themselves, not in the interest for us or communities. So
Yeah.
um, it's a series of practical things that just bring that economy back home to us, and we have more control and ownership over it.
And I think the ownership is the thing, isn't it? I'm just not
It is,
convinced it's quite as simple as that, because I
yeah,
think I would like to think that in the communities right now, but certainly your village hall you should own, and I think you should own the shops, because then if the recession comes in, I mean, I'm living in Lochilphead right now. It's so sad. All the shops are shut.
yeah.
3 of the hotels are closed, and you're just like, these buildings are not getting heated. We should be able to do something with them. If they were owned by the community, then you could come together and come up with ideas. You would have to. But do you know anywhere that's really doing well with this? Because I know there's some villages in Scotland that own their own land, that own their own. Do you know a good example of it working?
Well, there's a range of different instances of community wealth building, but obviously in terms of rural Scotland, when you can look at like the Isle of Gia, Isle of Egg, up there in the Tolster Community Development Trust up in Lewis, they own the land, and of what you're seeing is a whole range of ancillary benefits in terms of
Uh-huh.
like wind generation and a whole range of other stuff. So they're you like the rural poster childs, if you like, of community wealth building. Um,
Right.
but you're also seeing urban areas where community land trusts and a whole range of other forms of ownership in urban areas, which are seeing people actually owning the land, building housing on the land, affordable housing, having community-owned shops, having community-owned manufacturing, a whole range of stuff, maker space, a whole range of things. So, I mean, um, they're the manifestations of it. And ownership, though, is key, Lilia. Look at the cost of living crisis we have, right? Energy prices. Well, who's gaining? Energy companies make huge dividends, right?
No,
They're making huge profits, and it's not coming back to us, right?
no.
So dividends is wealth extraction. If you
Uh-huh.
have more community ownership of this, there's no the dividends that we are the owners, so there's not those big distant shareholders.
Uh-huh.
Um, if you look at, say, also cost of living crisis, in terms of um, the financial architecture, and you have, we all have with mortgages, the financial stuff, there's got to be a return back to those financial houses, community banks, public banks, credit unions, all those different forms of ownership. They don't have those externalities, they don't have those shareholders to pay dividends to. So a lot of the yoke that we're under in terms of the economic travails we have, including cost of living, does go back to ownership. It goes
Mhm.
back to somebody else making a buck and extracting those dividends from it. That should be repatriated in part of the system, and we could see cost reducing if there's more local and community ownership.
And do you think that as communities, and I'm talking about me as well, need more education around this?
Yes. Look, no disrespect to people at all, but like it's part of the earlier point I made is that the economy is something that's out there that we fit into, you know, and there's very little economic literacy, as we call it, economic understanding of exactly how the economy functions and whose interest it functions for.
Yeah.
And, big corporates, big global players, they don't really want us to kind of see exactly how the economy functions because if they do, they'll see the rip-off and they'll see the wealth extraction that takes place.
Uh-huh.
But interestingly, the mask is starting to slip. People are starting to question a little bit more. Um, Even in, when I studied economics, even the study, in universities, the scholarship around economics, it's kind of traditional. It's kind of talks about, supply and demand, big macro theories. It doesn't really talk about the basic things that I'm talking about, the common
Yeah.
sense things it's talking about,
Yeah.
in terms of like an economy should be constructed for us, by us, for us, and work in a relational way with us and our communities. So even the way that economics is taught is not all that effective in creating this question and dimension to it. But we all need to get a lot more savvy in terms of the economics that surround us, because it does control not just our economic life, our social, cultural life, and of course our well-being.
Well, exactly, and that's really what I was wanting to lead on to. But before we do that, um, it's almost like a kind of 180-degree shift. So instead of sitting hoping the government are going to fix it, we actually have to realise, no, the people that care most about our wealth are us, not the government. So it's going to involve, because I know there's been community takeovers that have not worked, and I'm just talking about one business, because at the end of the day, you take over a hotel, the hotel still has to be run. So, I just kind of feel we really need to understand that we're probably, instead of sitting back and hoping somebody will fix it, we need to understand that no, it's not, nobody's coming to save us. We need to do that ourselves. And I think the only way you would do that is if you truly understood the stuff that you talk about. So what would be a good way of getting that? I mean, obviously people will come and hear you at the festival and they'll get inspired. But is there a way to make, let's just start with Scotland, the people of Scotland more economically literate?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think, there's many examples of community wealth building across Scotland. There is
Uh-huh.
community land trusts, there is local independent shops, there is cooperatives, there is employee-owned firms, um, there is credit unions, there are there is a process by which there is community ownership of energy. There's a whole range of things that's examples of it, and I think the key here is that those examples are, I call them epiphanies of possibilities. They are
Uh-huh.
something that are really important. They actually are markers of what a new economy could look like, and
Yes.
that they're not really scaled. They're done in spite of the system,
Right.
really, opposed to the system supporting them, because the system doesn't really want them, because in a way it's a threat to global power and wealth
Yeah.
extraction. Um, so um, that's why it's important in a policy sense, and of course the Scottish government's adopting this legislation to kind of create an enabling environment for those things to grow more. So we get more community land trusts, more cooperatives, more community buyouts, more employee-owned firms, more independent shops protected, and so on and so forth. And so we're on a an amplification and scaling up game. Yeah,
Uh-huh.
that those things we've got need to work, and we need to sing from the rooftops about them, and
Yeah.
then do more and more and more of them, hopefully within a progressive a policy, a supportive policy environment that supports their growth.
Uh-huh. I think the time's right now, don't you? Because I think, and
Absolutely.
I'm probably guilty of this, like most people. If you're quite comfortable, why are you going to bother? But when you really start to see the levels of corruption, the crazy amount of money people are getting while people are going to food banks, and it's just like, no, 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 this is just going far enough. Having been to India and thought, my God, that it looks a lot healthier and wealthier here than it looks at home. It's just like, it's really quite shocking. 25% of our people at this moment in time unable to work with their health issues. I mean, this is so. Let's go there with the health and the wealth. And can you explain about how, when you take people out of poor wealth, their health improves?
Well, the first thing to say broadly is that our economy as it's presently constructed, and it is constructed, and it is designed, right? It doesn't happen by chance. Um,
Yes.
it is poverty and ill health producing.
Mhm.
It produces poverty and ill health because for every person that's struggling to make ends meet, they're stressed, they've got
Yeah.
poor mental health, right? They're buying they're buying the cheapest food, right? They're not yet. There's um, worries about their home, which is a great sense of well-being to have a
Yes.
home, an affordable home. So a lot of our present uh, lack of well-being, our lack of our poverty is because of it's a symptom of an economy that's going wrong, that's not serving us. Um, and so it's an imperative if we want to improve our health outcomes, health equals wealth. And we need to think about how we get more wealth back into the pockets of everyday people across Scotland. Only then will you solve the health crises,
Uh-huh.
the mental health crisis, the well-being crisis. Um, and we know that if you've got more money in your pocket, simplistic, if you've got more money in your pocket, you have agency, you have power, and that is a surefire way of getting better health outcomes. Uh,
Uh-huh.
so, and also it's important to note that wealth in Scotland, we've never been wealthier as a nation. The amount of wealth that we have,
Really?
the world has never been wealthier. We've got
Uh-huh.
more money than we've ever had. There's there is unbelievable amounts of wealth, and also fascinatingly, we've never had so much knowledge and power and technology, but a lot of that is not serving our own well-being.
I know.
Uh, and so it's economic system change. It's rewiring the system to actually make sure that opposed to it being wealth producing for a few, it's health producing for everyone, for us all. And
And
that's how that's the kind of, if you like, the philosophical kernel of community wealth building. It's kind of saying we're wanting to bring the economy back home so that we all can live fulfilled, beautiful, enlightened, healthy lives laden with well-being.
yeah. Oh, I love that. Laden with well-being. Yeah, and do we need a bit of a shift in mindset that it can be done? Do you think we need? It's like almost like we need hope, and that's where I'm thinking the education. It's like, come on, guys, if we all can see, or enough of us can see and realize and understand this, because I see it like, like the big cruise ship can't turn in a penny, but it can start to initiate a turn. And that's the Heal Scotland mission, is can we start to initiate that turn and get enough people? I always said this, it's got to be a groundswell of people, for the people, by the people. And I also wonder if the people that are going to be more motivated will be the people that have been shafted by the system properly for perhaps generations.
Absolutely. I mean, you look, the way the modern capitalism works is that it creates passivity It's like, the act of going to the large supermarket um, is a sort of crude, passive act, really, where you go and buy your thing in the cellophane and stick it in your basket, and then you're kind of passive. You're not active in that any way. It's just if you meat, it's just a lump in a lump there. You've got no attachment to that product in any way, and that passivity creates a kind of, well, it creates a passivity, but we know, don't we? There's a hankering in everyone for the authentic, for the experience, for the real, for the meaningful. Look, just an example. You buy your veg in the big supermarket, and you buy a tomato or carrots, stick it in your basket, pay for it, job done. You go to the greengrocer and you have a talk about where the carrots come from, and you have a chat to the greengrocer, and the greengrocer's a human being, and you have a relationship with them. You have a relationship with him and his carrots. Um, that is a much more fulfilling experience, and more people want that kind of experience. There's a growth anyway of buying local, provenance of food, and so forth. So it's that thing we need to kind of capture and say, isn't this a beautiful thing? Yeah. So there is that, to rouse people from the passivity of what they consume to actually relate to it more. And secondly, more politically, we do need to get arsey and more political. You know, um, you know, even if you're comfortable in your life, you really, really need to look at climate crisis. You need to look at the ills that's going on in the world, and not just turn the telly off and not just shout at the telly, but get active. We need to get political. And I'm not making a party political point. Well, get political, get active. We can shape things. Politics matters. And to get involved and to shape things, what happens in your local community or wherever, is really, really important. And we have become passive politically. Politics is something that we consume. It's something it's a kind of a ticking a box exercise. It's not. Politics and democracy is something we get involved in. It's something we relate to. So, and unfortunately, fortunately, because the way the world's going, because climate crisis is growing exponentially, it's going to get more and more turbulent, and more people will start to see the light, I think. So it's a race against time. Are we going to get more and more active quick enough before the planet truly combusts? Or are we, yeah, or are we going to start to more and more people see the light, more and more political activism, more and more people getting involved in trying to shape their economic system in different ways? I'm optimistic. I think there's enough examples I've got anyway. There's the juggernaut road crash we're on. More and more people, as they get closer and closer to the wall, think, hold on here, we need to think differently. So there is lots of doom and gloom, but through any crisis, there's opportunity. And I think I see in my work, and I work globally, I see many more communities, many more people starting to switch on to this, getting politically
100%.
active.
I heard Vandana Shiva speak, and she's very anti-GMO, and she's all about seed saving and soil health. And she said, make no mistake, the changes are on. There's brilliant things happening all over the world. It's just that's not normally what you see in the on the news, unless you obviously look for it yourself. But what people are getting fed is obviously all the awful stuff, and being kept in that state of fear, which of course stops you from getting actively involved, leads to more stress. Doing as little as possible and stop switching the TV off, which is what a lot of people do now, and they've not got a clue what's actually going on, which, may be a short-term solution, but it's not really a long-term. We absolutely have to understand what's happening. And I think, certainly from my perspective, I thought, oh, well, the politicians they've got that job to do. They'll do it right. But what we understand now is you don't keep an eye on what people are doing. They can go way, way, way out with their boundaries of, out with their job description, and they absolutely rip the piss out of you. And that's clearly what's happened. And it seems to be a human thing. So if we're not holding people accountable for what they're doing, if people aren't holding me accountable, I mean, that's how we work in relationships of all kinds. Is that feedback of like, how's this? How are we doing? We're communicating, we're looking at it, we're adjusting it, we're moving with the times. And that's, I think, something that I realized, no, you have to pay attention now, because look what happened when none of us really paid much attention.
Sure. I think, solidarity is a great thing. And it's really important there is solidarity with our fellow human beings, with human social beings, and the act of solidarity is a human condition. And as I said before, modern economy kind of slices and dices us apart from each other, really. We don't need to rely on other people as much. We can rely on ourselves, our own little individual unit. But if you look at certain things, like look at the post office crisis as an example, these were, decent. I'm stereotyping, but obviously all decent, decent, ordinary people, maybe not politically active, had levels of community solidarity, I'm sure. But the corporate mask of the post office slipped, and they've seen behind that, and they've seen such abuse.
I know.
Yeah. And there's many, many millions of examples of that, where people start to see the light. Hold on here. Wow, those big behemoths are actually working in their own interests, and they lie, and they dissemble, and they avoid truths because they're looking to protect themselves. Those examples, it creates a new solidarity when those opposing forces, if you like, you can see exactly what the nature of them are. And I think there's more and more of those examples where the mask is slipping, and it creates new levels of solidarity. Look at even like affluent areas in Scotland where there's, perhaps wind turbines that are, disproportionate to the locality. 5 or 6 wind turbines get thrown up, huge, perhaps in a leafy glen. People, big houses, they might actually think, hold on here, what's going on? This is not good. Yeah. And they start to create solidarity with their neighbours to think, we need to oppose this. These are really great instances of where people become mobilised, roused from their individualism, roused from their own transactional world to something that relates to their place, their neighbours, and then they become more politicised. These are really important moments, and there's more and more of them as the world starts to, as the economic system starts to creak. So the danger, of course, is that some people turn to the quick and easy answers of your demigods like Trump or Farage or these reactionary populists. That's the worry, that they say, yeah, you are being ripped off, but I've got the solution. Trust me, I'll be your man. I'll sort it out. That's the worry. But the political strategy, of course, is to counteract those demigod reactionary populists with genuine community solidarity and genuine policies that support community wealth, that support collective endeavour, rather than thinking there's another man in a white horse going to solve your problems.
I know, and that is the thing, isn't it? It's that very allopathic solution of like, here's the problem, instead of like, well, how do I fix it? It's like, can you give me something to fix this? Which surely by now we've learned that's really not how any of the systems work, whether it's your bodily system or whether it's your community system. So so that's I know that you've been working with Jane and some social enterprises, and which seems a really great place to start to educate the people that are working with the people in communities, because I'm assuming that some communities are more active than others. Would that be, do you think some communities people just go like, right, we're doing this? Like if people listening to this would be like, well, right, how do we do that? How do we really swing into action and create, this within our community sooner rather than later? And food's got to be a part of that, surely, because I always say, the supermarket's shelves are empty and you do not know how to grow food, or you do not know how to farm. It's like, how disabled does that make you?
I think there's certain. I mentioned the kind of triggers that create opposition to something's important. I think anything that creates the back against the wall is important to kind of, you're against that wall, you're looking around, you're thinking, hold on, who else is experiencing this? And I
Aye.
think that's really important. Adversity is a great trigger for then
Yeah.
pushing forward collectively and thinking
Mhm.
different about things. I do think the foundational elements to our lives are really important. Housing, affordable housing. People can't get in the housing ladder. I think that's a real source by which people can start to commune and say, this is not right. Our kids can't get housing. That's not right. Food, I think, is important. Food security. I think energy and energy costs is really important. And that's
Yes.
really important in Scotland, given energy renewables. We
Uh-huh.
really need to make sure that more and more of those energy renewables are under community ownership. Uh,
Absolutely.
so food, housing, energy, I think these foundational aspects to our lives are really, really important to create that the opportunity for bonding with others who's also feeling the cost of living crisis, or worried about food security, or worried about how affordable housing. These are great reservoirs to tap into to build a different way of thinking about the economy. And what's positive about it is all of those things are kind of going badly wrong.
Uh-huh.
You know, they're
Yes.
not. It's not as if they're being fixed readily. The energy crisis is going to continue. There is an issues around food security and food provenance ongoing. There's an ongoing housing issue. So I think for people listening, it's very much about those things that make you annoyed, that you feel the pain. There'll be somebody else feeling that pain too, that's quite close to you, yeah, that's near you, and get active. Speak to people, find out who's also interested in that, who's also worried about it. Join groups, get active. Civil society action. You can't
Yeah.
beat it.
Uh-huh. I think it's happening quite organically, isn't it? It's just, can we kind of inspire more people to come out? Because I know with Heal Scotland, people are always saying, what can I do to help? And I'm like, well, turn up at the events, share the events, comment, get involved. Because it's so easy not to, and not realise that every single, comment you make, every event you share, you might be just spreading it to somebody who really needs it. And
Yeah,
also, it's like when you have these days where you're like want to throw your hands in the air, somebody else is having a better day, and go, come on, we keep facing forward. But we have to, for our kids, and for me, for your grandkids. I mean, what are we actually thinking is going to happen here if we don't take action?
sure. And the positive as well. I mean, there's a book by Robert Putnam, American sociologist, called Bowling Alone, that talks about the 1950s America and how they all became individualized society, and lost a lot of social capital. And Putnam basically bemoans that time. Not want to go back to the 50s, but he said America lost something. It lost that community, that individualism took
Mm-hmm.
move forward, and from then it created a whole range of other social and mental ills. And so the positive here is that for people that are not particularly political active, or not community, involved in civil action anyway, is it's actually good fun. it's actually it's actually good to be with others and to have from different walks of life where you're sharing something, a shared concern or a shared interest. This is the stuff of humankind. This is what we're meant to be doing. We're not meant to be sitting at home
Uh-huh.
watching telly in our own
Uh-huh.
little individual space. We actually really, really enjoy, and actually we get great sustenance from other people. We take energy from other people and give energy
Yeah.
back. And that
Yeah.
that is life fulfilling. So we shouldn't see this. I'm not, no way. I know you're not saying it, I'm not saying it. Let's get more active. And it's like, oh, that's very well. You that community active type, you that political type. It's like, no, I'm just a human being, and that's actually quite good,
Yeah.
and it's good to get out of your, um, uh, your own individual confines. But it's great, I live in Argyll as you do, Lilia, and there's more opportunities for it here. The incidental conversations, the sense of people having time for other people is more
Yes.
prevalent here than it is in some of the big cities. I mean, I've just had a conversation with a postman there as an example, small instance, but
Uh-huh.
chewed the fat for like 10, 15 minutes with a postie, right? I mean, it sounds frivolous, but in fact, that that was I learned something that was going on in the community that I didn't know. Um,
Yes.
he would pass on what I said to other people in the community. That's
Uh-huh.
that's the stuff of human life. That's a beautiful
Absolutely.
thing.
And it's really nice to think that you can be part of the solution. I think it gives you a strong purpose, you
Yes.
know. And again, back in the days, that's kind of how it quite would organically would work, because people had to be outside, working in the fields, working in the shops, working in the whatever businesses. That's what we were part of it, and we could see that. When I lived in Malta, it was very, there was a real community spirit. It's like it's our island, and I think that's the smaller groups of people you have. Although there's 500,000 Maltese allegedly, I think there's more in Canada and Australia now. But there's a real strong feeling of like helping and and looking after your elderly, because they still have that very strong community spirit. And just somehow I think for us,
But
everybody's working, so maybe you don't have time and you come home stressed, and the last thing you want to do is bump into somebody that's because a conversation's going to exhaust you. It's a shame, because
well,
that's kind of how it went.
no, 100%. And taking it back to economics, there's an ownership. We all we work hard, and we've not got time for that because I'm too busy working. When I come back, I'm knackered. I just want to lie on my back and watch the telly. I'm flipping been working all day. We're wage slaves in a way. But imagine if we owned more. Imagine if, just not even fanciful. Imagine if the community owned a wind farm, 30 turbines generating, and they own it. Now, I'm not just talking about dividends that go, benefits that make a new community making a new community centre. I'm talking serious money. I'm talking maybe they could make 3-4 million a year across a community. Well, if you own that and you've got a personal stake in it, well, you wouldn't need to work.
I know.
You would just dividends from the
Uh-huh.
ownership of the wind farm.
Yeah.
So ownership's key because it can free us. It can free us from the yoke of work, or at least, yeah, in a
Uh-huh.
sense, it'll be work that relates to the actual activity, So, and there's also a great book by is it Martin Salins? It's called Stone Age Economics, right?
Uh-huh.
He wrote it in the 70s, a classic economic text. Well, it is for like weirdos like me, right? But so you think about Stone Age economics. You think Stone Age times, you're thinking like it was bloody awful, wasn't it? It was like you were eating stone, right? It was cold, right? It'd be miserable. You had barely existed. Grubs, maybe the odd deer now and again. Horrible, horrible times, you would have thought. Well, he's done a study of it, and it was actually a time of great abundance. The Stone Age people worked. They worked for a couple of hours a day, right? Right. They had enough food they could get, right? And then they just basically had parties. They were a party people. Yeah, they they had they had abundance, yeah,
Yeah.
because they owned their own stuff and they did their own thing. They weren't slaving away, working away, building lots of like stone huts and stone vehicles, and no, 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 no. They went down, caught some fish, came back, ate them, had a party, great time.
Uh-huh.
Talked to their friends. So the idea that modern life is the apex of human fulfillment is ridiculous. We've actually retreated as a race, as a species,
Aye, we're
because we've actually,
devolving.
yeah, we're
Yeah.
devolving, and so ownership of production, ownership of more stuff that we actually get the dividends from, is the utopia we should be going for. Now, community wealth building is in no way, it's got utopian elements, but it's kind of starting to, one bit at a time, moving us up the notches up to that kind of idea where we actually have more control over those things, and we don't need to be just workers all the time. We can actually enjoy a little bit more of abundance
of time, isn't it? It's like time to spend with the older people, time to spend with the kids, time actually not feeling constantly stressed or thinking about the next thing you have to do. And as soon as people come out of the stress states, then obviously people are a lot nicer, a lot calmer. You make better choices, not just for your community, but for yourself, for the body. So really, ultimately, it's taking people out of these stress states that's going to change everything.
Yeah. I mean, like many tribal people from around the world, you know, the economy in a sense is like an ecosystem, and the relationship between themselves, the land, their culture, and the economy are all sort of as one. And there is a natural, what's the word I'm looking for? A natural equilibrium in tribal people and First Nation people and indigenous people. And there's something beautiful about that indigeneity of where we can learn a lot from those people who are telling us how you actually live a life and how you shape an economy to live a fulfilled life.
And look after each other instead of competing.
Sure. Yeah.
So, well, that's great. There was a few things that you said there that I'd forgotten about. So I think you're on at 10 o'clock on Saturday morning. Are you aware of that? Yeah. So, and you've got an hour and a half. So, because I know that last year we just didn't have enough time. So I've given you enough time this time because I know people want to ask a lot of questions afterwards. Because obviously when you talk, it inspires you and it makes you want to go, like, let's get into our communities right now and change it. So people are going to get the opportunity to get some real solid advice and ideas and inspiration, which is obviously what it's all about. So that's fantastic. I think we could sit here and talk about this stuff all day, but I think that's brilliant. We've got a few of these nuggets out, and I'm going to let you go, and I'll see you a week tomorrow.
Yes, thanks very much. And I'm going to have we stopped recording? Well, we edit it.
Not yet. No.
Oh, right.
Right. So we'll say bye, and then we can just cut off this recording.
Sorry.
No worries. Come and meet and see Neil talk at the festival. He's on 10 o'clock next Saturday morning. See you then.